Hello and welcome to the panel, where we take a look at graphic novels and talk about their story, art, and everything in between. The Boys has become one of Amazon Prime Video's biggest hits, but let's get back to the source material and see where this crazy story of a vigilante team's mission to combat soups that misuse their powers starts. Get ready to deep dive into this insane world on this episode of The Panel. Thanks for tuning in. And today, joining us, I have from DST Unboxed and Previews World Toy Chest, host Natasha, aka Cannon Doll X.
Hey, everybody.
Hey.
I'm super excited to be here.
I love it. And then we also have novelist Derek Scarzella of Action A Go-Go.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me. Ready for some fun.
And we also have podcaster Chris Campbell of Three Black Geeks.
Hey, how's it going?
Nice. Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining me on this. This is going to be kind of an insane episode because there's really no way of taming this. So we're going to try.
Yeah. That was my question when we decided to cover The Boys was how are we going to make this PG? Yeah.
Well, we're gonna give it a try.
Yeah.
Bad chance.
But let me.
Yeah. Is this gonna have the R rating come up in the beginning?
The disclaimer really needs to pop up again.
definitely mark that not for kids on YouTube.
And for those of you that are just joining us, I'm going to go ahead and give you a brief summary of the plot for The Boys. The series is set in between 2006 and 2008 in a world where superheroes exist. But most of the superheroes in the series universe are corrupted by their celebrity status and often engage in reckless behavior, compromising the safety of the world. The story follows a small clandestine CIA squad, informally known as the Boys, led by Billy Butcher, and comprising of Mother's Milk, the Frenchman, the female, and the new addition, wee Huey Campbell, who are charged with monitoring the superhero community, often leading to gruesome confrontations and dreadful results.
Understatement.
Now, going into this, have all of y'all seen the show?
Yes, 4 times.
Okay. Natasha is a veteran.
I loved this series when it first came out, and then when they were talking about coming out with the show, I was like, no way. How are they going to do this? They did it, and they really did it. That's me being G-rated right there. That's they really did it. Yeah. They don't leave a lot to the imagination in this show.
What about you guys?
They do in the comic.
Oh yeah. What was your first impression walking into reading The Boys? And I'm gonna pick on you, Derek.
Okay, cool. In terms of reading it, I love the show, but in terms of reading it, I remember being right out of high school when it came out, and I was a huge Ennis nut because, of course, the writer. Ennis, Garth Ennis.
Yeah.
And I was coming off of Punisher and what he did with Punisher. And I don't know if anybody remembers this, but Punisher was out in the woods for so long and he came in and did amazing with it. And I was just super excited to get more of his work. And this thing was such a slap in the face. The writing is so good. The art was fantastic. The blood and guts and violence was very de rigueur for the time. So seeing all that was just a lot of fun. And of course, what he did with it was enrapturing in his special Garth Ennis way. So I've got nothing but fond memories for it, and I actually stuck through the series to the end. I was very proud of that as a comic book nerd. It was first out, sticking with it through Wildstorm dropping it, and I believe Dynamite picking it up, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it was a wild ride from beginning to end.
Yeah, definitely. What about you, Chris? What was your first intro to The Boys?
Just like with Derek, it was the same thing because I remember Ennis was on Punisher during that period of time. I want to say that was like when Marvel was coming out of, I think, like they were about to be, about to say foreclose, bankruptcy. And Enos's Punisher was one of the main line books alongside, I believe, was it Black Panther and stuff at the time. So I remember reading it and just the visual nature of what he was doing with Punisher. I actually did enjoy it because that fit what Punisher is. So I didn't read The Boys until probably like a couple of years later after it already came out because everybody on the message boards and stuff kept talking about it. And I was like, read this. And I enjoyed it for what it was. It was definitely something that was a 180 from what you usually see out of superhero comics and such at that time. And for what it was doing, it was enjoyable. I don't really have anything bad to say about it or anything per se, but it definitely worked for the time period that it came out in. So
For sure, for sure. But I want to go ahead and get us deep into this story because I feel like there's so much to discuss about this. So let's go ahead and start deep diving into the actual story. Garth Ennis is a comics writer from Northern Ireland who started his career at 19 with Troubled Souls. Soon he began writing for British comics publications and became immensely popular. Hence, he dropped out of college and made comic writing a full-fledged career. He's best known for his long-running Marvel series franchise Punisher and the Vertigo series Preacher. He also created The Boys for Wildstorm, later Dynamite Entertainment, Judge Dredd, Hellblazer for DC, and Hitman again for DC. So he's got a huge, like, trying to condense his whole, like, biography into one, like, little paragraph was so freaking hard. All right, so let's go ahead and start deep diving into the story. It is pretty brutal. What did you guys feel about, like, just this kind of, just, like you said, a jump from what you normally have from superhero comics to, like, something like this where it's just people are getting torn apart. What were your thoughts on that? Let's start with Natasha.
So I love the whole concept of it. The whole, these aren't necessarily superheroes. They're superhumans who, are just humans. And it doesn't mean they're good necessarily. It doesn't mean they have a good moral compass going on. Like what it would really be like, for me at least, perspective wise, especially in the time frame that they're putting it in, even now, what would happen if people had superpowers? Like that doesn't mean everyone's going to be Superman. That doesn't mean everyone's going to be Wonder Woman. It's not going to have like that kind of thing. You've got Homelander who gives off that Superman vibe, but certainly is not Kal-El at all. And I like it because it's gritty. I feel like it's just that realism of if superheroes or superhumans actually lived in our world that we exist in now versus, another multiverse or something like that. And like, I really just, it's amazing. It's a great concept. And like the fact that these people do have all these superpowers, and that doesn't mean they're, the invisible guy really is going to do that thing that most people say when they're going to have invisible powers is they're going to hide out while people are getting changed or something creepy or like whatever. So it's it's a realistic approach to the superhero trope, but, in definitely a more gritty, gross way.
Gritty and gross. What about you guys? Because you guys were talking about how it was like, when you first got into it, it was like this whole departure from that. Kind of what were your thoughts a little bit more in depth, Chris?
I think it's just the idea of like we as audience members, like when we read comics, we have this perception of what we think of heroes. Like, we think of Captain America's and Iron Man's and Spider-Man's, Batman, Superman, all that. Like we have an idea of what a hero could be. So when you get The Boys, they kind of flip it on a very sort of like what would be the natural human instinct of someone that actually has powers? What would they actually do? And everybody wouldn't be good. It wouldn't be just a clear cut, everybody's good and bad. It's like you have a lot of people that would be very perverse in how they use their powers. And the whole thing with Homelander isn't he's like the inverse opposite of Superman. His idealism of like America and all that stuff, it's kind of verbatim to like real life of how people that would have that power would be, in a way, if you think about it. So it's like that was something that was a breath of fresh air in the sense of like this would be a very realistic kind of tonal of what a person would be with their powers, even though most people will probably deny it on camera and stuff. But it was like, no, this is what people would do. They would do a lot of crazy ass stuff.
Oh, no,
And it
for
just,
sure.
I just have to touch on that. Like, that's really, like, when you see social media now and stuff like that, you've got your social media view of how it looks picture perfect and everything, but is that your reality? Probably not.
Derek, how did you feel about the this kind of realism?
Oh, I thought it was great. I mean, for the era, you know, like there was other comics around the time, like the Ultimates and Black Summer, that were a bit more political, or at least had political overtones to it. But at the end of the day, it made perfect sense. Like, yeah, of course, Batman would have a marketing department. He's a billionaire. Superman and the Justice League would have reporters and staff and stuff. But the way he skewers it with this ultra corporate, ultra polished background, you know, like executives constantly monitoring them, make sure you're tight for the camera, stuff like that. It was great. I mean, and I'm sort of felt that as a comic book writer and in the business, you know, there's definite component to that. He may have been channeling, working with the majors, you know, having your public image set. So yeah, it made perfect sense, and it was great.
Yeah, just to add to that though, like I think that was the other angle of it I thought was interesting because it's very real life, the corporate aspect of it. Like, of course, a corporation is going to come in and try to like make money off of it because that's capitalism. Like, you can't have superheroes running around without like, yo, throw a sponsor on them, you know, and things like. Because even prior to this, like you had what's the movie Mystery Man? Well, the hero on that one had like all the sponsors on his jacket. So it's like, well, of course it makes sense that the government and businesses are going to try to join in on this to make money off of it, because otherwise you can't have these people out here just doing whatever without getting some money out of it. And
IRL though, like what companies do you think would sponsor like suits?
Oh, I'm not answering that.
Nike.
Nike, that's enough.
Yeah.
All the majors. Apple.
Any military industrial corporation like Northrop Grumman would definitely try to.
Lockheed Martin.
All
the majors.
I could see that. Now, they also created some like amazing characters that are just kind of wild and out there. Did you guys have a particular hero or anti-hero that was kind of your favorite to follow along in the story? And I'm going to pick on Derek first.
Well, through the whole story, I want to say Black Noir. They made some changes in the show, but Black Noir always fascinated me, like what was going on there, because that stretched out over the whole series, right? I want to say up front, just Homelander, just the whole idea of what if Superman was secretly like a terrible person behind the curtain, and you know, his relationship with the team and how that's explored, and how that changes. You know, there's so much power there, and you know, psychopathy going on and how he deals with stuff. So yeah, I want to say Homelander. Just I'll take the good one first. So.
What about you, Natasha?
So initially Queen Maeve, because you know I've got my own Wonder Woman stuff going on with my life, and she was, you know, who I was drawn to, like thinking she was going to be kind of course, like which is the whole impression is she's going to be kind of a Wonder Woman character. But I like that as it goes on, it's just 0 F's are given and 0, like she just does not. She's there. She's got to do her thing. She's like, whatever. And then even in the TV series too, they also pull that in and like, just really, she has, you know, her character arc. But then also I loved Frenchie. Frenchie is just like wild and crazy, but also very sensitive and soft at the same time, but then also has no problem blowing people up. Like he's a very funny, conflicted character. I've just always in the comics and the TV show, really Frenchie is like one of my favorites.
He's a great character.
Mhm.
What about you, Chris?
I can't say it's a favorite, but I would say it was more of an intriguing thing. The Deep in the comic, like it's a
Mm.
definitely 180 from like
Yeah.
the show, but the concept of this guy who just wears a full-blown diving suit under
Yeah.
the guise that he doesn't have powers. That's spoilers, but like his character doesn't have powers, but like Vault basically is marketing him as like he's the king of the seas and stuff. And the
Yeah.
fact that he's like a black guy, but he can't take the suit off because of a curse. Like it's an interesting angle to it, but just the aspect too, like the fact that he's probably out of the whole group, like the most mature out of all of them, was something that stood out to me a little bit. So,
Which is something I would not say for the Deep on the show.
oh yeah.
No.
They wanted to introduce
Ultimate creep.
him.
Now the show did there are a lot of differences, but how
Yeah.
did you feel the translation was from like the comic onto the big screen? Who wants to start us off? Let's see, Chris, go for it.
I think it worked in the show's favor of them sort of moving away from the comic tone, because I mean, all of us have said at length that the stuff in the comic worked for that time period. And I think certain things from the book, particularly when it dealt with Starlight and the rest of the team, they changed up for the show to imply it, and it worked better implying it versus actually showing it.
Yes.
Even the stuff, even down to like the Deep, I thought the angle that they worked with the Deep actually worked a little bit, for better or worse. Even stuff with Homelander, they I mean, I guess you could say it's perfect timing because the way Homelander is portrayed, hey, real life Trump and all that. So and also just, I think more so than anything, I think what makes the show really good is that a lot of people, it's really shining a light on a lot of people that fundamentally don't understand like superheroes as a whole, in terms of like, beyond just the boys, but just like Marvel, DC, and a lot of other people, just how superheroes should operate. They just assume like, oh, he's just this, like Soldier Boy being an example in the show. Like he's like Soldier Boy in the show, he feels like the version of Ultimate Captain America, where he's very rigid in his beliefs in a very conservative way, but like the Captain America that we know from Marvel, like the main line, he isn't like that. But I like that they add that angle with him in the show. Like, obviously they weren't going to go full tilt like he is in the comics, because that's a lot. That is a lot to really do. So even with the way they did them in the show, it worked. So that's probably one of the biggest things I love about it, is that even the changes, it didn't deviate away from what we know of the boys from the comics. They still kept the spirit of what the comic is in the show.
Yeah, it's kind of like Preacher. When they came out with Preacher, I was like, how are they gonna like translate this? Because I was just on a flight like trying to read this, and there were a couple pages I'd get to, and I'm like, can the guy in the like aisle across from me, behind me, can he see what I'm reading? And I'm like trying to hold it like this while I'm reading so no one will see. So yeah. All right, what about you, Derek? How did you feel about like the translation?
Well, Chris sort of took the words right out of my mouth, but I mean, I'm a pretty tough customer sometimes when it comes to this stuff. Still have bones to pick with the original X-Men movies, for instance, but overall, they got the spirit of it, right? And I sort of forgot when it came out. It came out in 2006, literally a different era for the comic. But the spirit of it really still made sense given like the rise of Marvel movies, right? And how the ecosystem changed so much over the past close to 20 years. So overall, I've been pleased with it, really. And, there's always problems translating something from one medium to another. But, the way they've explored things in the show does pay tribute to the comic. The comic was very R-rated, NC-17. And the show hasn't shied away from that at all. And a lot of the twists they've done have still kept me watching. Right? That's the ultimate test for me. Do I want to keep watching it? And yeah, I'm excited for season 4 and what they did with Soldier Boy and Homelander and their proclivities. I think it did add to it overall, and they've done a great job. I never saw Preacher though, so I can't speak to that. But I've been pleased with the boys overall.
I mean, the Herogasm episode was like, like when they did that episode, I was like, well, okay, they did it. Cool.
Yeah.
We're good.
Yeah.
We don't need any more. Just
We don't know. No, could have been a whole lot worse. Just so you folks at home know.
Oh yeah.
A
No, I feel like
whole lot messier, I should say.
There you go.
I feel like they put like the Deep in there kind of as this comedic like character because this is so intense and you kind of need something in real life to like not be so crazy.
Yeah.
Well, it is a great bit of comic relief to see him talking to the octopus or whatever.
Yes. Oh my God.
But
I
it's
mean, I think that's what,
you know?
I think that's
Yeah.
what translates so well with the show and even with the comic is that when you're reading the comic, you get the tenseness of it of these heroes doing that, but because it's a comic, your mentality is just kind of like, well, it's a comic book, so the visualness, it's there, but it doesn't hit. But when you're watching in the show, and even when you see Homelander throwing threats like that, again, that moment when he's on the plane and he's about ready to kill everybody on the plane, when
Yeah.
you can't get that moment in the comic. Like you see it and it's obviously there, but when you see it in the show, it hits way different because it's like, oh crap, like he really is going to kill these people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they was like they thought they were going to get saved, and it was like, oh no, like it hits you like immediately. Like,
And he's like, "Hey, yeah, get off the plane." Like,
yeah,
what?
even when he tells,
What do you mean? Like,
spoilers when he tells the lady to jump
Yeah.
off the building, like he's dead serious on that.
yeah,
And you can't get that moment in the comic where like because you just see in the comic, it's just you might think it's done for play, but when he's telling this woman, no, I want you to jump off the building, just do it."
yeah.
It's like,
Mhm.
oh, okay, this is serious.
Oh my God.
Natasha, what did you think about like the translation?
I mean, the guys have covered so much of it. Like, the only thing I could add is the fact that in the comics, like certain characters I don't really care about. I have no attachment to. I could care less, whatever. But in the TV show, like you kind of, some of them, you want to know what happens. You want to know, does this turn out? Like, for example, A-Train. Like that, and you almost feel bad for him on certain levels. Like that poor guy goes through all these different arcs of he's almost there. He's gonna have some redemption, and then he screws it up again, and then he goes, and then he screws it up again, and you're just like, come on, man, like get it together. Like you kind of, at least for me personally, you like get a little more in depth, a little more attached to these characters, seeing them live, and and like Chris is saying, like it's a different, you have a different view of it. You get a little more feeling with it, and versus just reading it and seeing it on the pages. So I think they did a really good job with all of it. I mean, I love the comics and I love the show. Like I'm season 4, cannot wait. I can't I love it.
So now, if we were thinking about fan casting this, like I know we already have like the show and the cast. Are there any changes that you would make? Because like for me, after reading the comic and I saw Huey, I was like, why is this not Simon Pegg? Like for part of me was like,
I know.
A lot of people said that.
There's a little preface or whatever about him. He gives a little thing
did
before
I not
it.
read that? Oh,
Yeah.
man, I didn't read that part.
An
But yeah,
introduction by Simon Pegg. It is Simon Pegg. Yeah.
Oh, dang. Okay.
Yeah.
I missed that. I'm gonna
So
go
good
back and read
call.
that.
Good call. Good casting.
Off of that, real quick, there was a little moment in the comic where an attendant, the CIA agent says the guy who looks like, the guy who sounds like Michael Caine. And
Yes.
that was another little, and they're like, oh, now I know what Butcher sounds like. And that was such a great little moment too, where I'm like, oh, now I can translate this in my American brain.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a time period, if you think about it, with the boys and Derek mentioned the Ultimates, because I totally forgot the Ultimates dropped around that time. That was a period of time where we saw like comic book like companies put like sort of celebs in the books in certain small slight ways and stuff. And like you said, with Simon Pegg being in this book, it's like, oh yeah, that's right, that was a thing. And a lot of these other characters kind of look like other celebs, but not like outright, one.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Wanted. Wanted was Eminem and Halle Berry, right? And then, of course, Ultimates, Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury, which happened in real life, which was still awesome, right? Like that was a whole little fun part of that era.
No. And actually, I had to go back because I was like, oh yeah, I didn't make it all the way to the very back of the book.
Yeah, my book has it right in this front.
Oh.
Right in the front.
Mine's like all the way in the back. What placement on this
I
one?
know they've done reissues of those books, so it makes
Yeah.
sense.
I want to because I got the one that's like the Amazon original.
Yeah.
All right, we have gone deep into the story, but now I want to start integrating the art into it. So let's start pushing that together. Derek Robertson is an American comic book artist, writer, and creator with a decades-long career in the industry. Born and raised in the Northern California Bay Area and self-trained as an artist, his notable works include co-creating the award-winning Transmetropolitan, The Boys, Happy, and Oliver with Gary Whitta for Image Comics. Derek has also illustrated for both Marvel and DC Comics on characters including Batman, the Justice League, Wolverine, the Punisher, and Spider-Man. So another long history in comics that I have to sum up into like one little thing.
You did a great job. Mia.
All right, so let's go ahead and start kind of integrating the art in here because I think that really plays a major part in the story.
Huge. Huge part.
What were your thoughts? Who wants to kind of give their thoughts on art first? What they thought of the art? Should I pick on? Nick?
I'll go first. So, like you said, it is a major part of the storyline. Probably out of a lot of comics that I read, like this one, you have to have the great art to go with the great words because it's all telling a story. It's all because you've even got panels that have like no words on it, and it's telling a story. It's telling, so much, and it's so gritty and it's so dark. It totally matches the whole theme of the whole series. And I mean, I couldn't even imagine any other art to go with this. Like they did a really, really good job. Like you have this whole panel here, and it's just like there's so much going on there, and it's just that's telling a whole story. And you've got like two bubbles there, and it's just the whole. It really it takes you in to the world and really just encapsulates the words and the story. I think it's really, really great.
What about you, Derek?
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to share. I don't know. Can you all see this? No. That was funny. Anyway,
which page is it? I'll help
you. It blurred it out.
It did.
Yeah, there you go. That's it. That's literally it.
Yay! Oh, nice job.
Yeah, that's like a great. Like it tells you so much about the characters. It tells you so much about the story, where they are in life. And I mean, Derek Robinson. I think he took some breaks over the course of the run, but he's so solid. He's so on point, and his art really grounds the world. It's not spectacular and as I don't know. I'm thinking of Frank Quietly or whatnot. Not as crisp sometimes, but it's so gritty and detailed and full of pathos. Even images like that, what they're showing now, like you just the scene, you get the feel of what's going on. You can feel the smoke. You can feel the grit, and it's just wonderful throughout. Like he does an amazing job, and he was absolutely the right teammate for Ennis on this run.
What about you, Chris?
It had the same vibes. Again, bringing up the Ultimates, it kind of had that same vibe that Brian Hitch was doing in the Ultimates in terms of like giving you that real world sort of look of the heroes. Because even just on the character designs themselves, it didn't feel like it was very fantastical with the designs. They just looked like real people, like faults and all and stuff, even down to the heroes. Like the heroes didn't have that sort of like heroic look to them that we're used to from the mainline comics and stuff. And I actually thought that was good. And that was a good way to kind of bring people into that world,
Now, what are the big things? Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I was to say now that's a really good contrast to point out you have your kind of bubbly superhero comics you're normally used to, and then this dark, gritty other words that I can't say on camera.
I mean, like Soldier Boy is a good example of that because it's like he's supposed to be Captain America, but like it's not what you envision of what it would be. So it's like, oh, that actually makes sense because of course that would be what he looks like. All right, cool. I'm fine with that. That works.
Yeah.
Now, one of the big things that people talk about the show is like the level of violence on it, because it's kind of insane. Like, it's just like just the whole idea of some of the violence that's in. How do you guys
And that's
feel
a mild
about this?
one.
Yeah, right.
How do you think? How do you feel about this level of violence that was in here? Because this is a pretty dang violent like comic book. Do you feel like it was the appropriate level, maybe too much? Like how did that make you feel about?
It was on par, to be frank. Again, like I was actually surprised at how far they've gone, but I mean, Ennis was very creative with the ways he would. I mean, there you go.
Yeah, like
He takes a left turn in the middle of a fight, and people's thumbs are getting ripped off, and the show really carried it through. It's what the way it should be, as far as I'm concerned.
yeah, it's like it's violent, but and I think to the show's credit, it's not violent for the sake of violence, right? Like there's a certain like rhyme and reason for the visualness of certain things. Like I think a good example of that was jumping ahead on the show. Was it let's say Storm? I forget her name. When she gets killed and you see her body get burnt up and stuff and it's blown apart, it's like, okay, cool. Like it's not just actually no, I'll take it a step back. When he's dragging my man out in the streets to, make amends for his brother being hurt, like that was like visceral as hell seeing him drag the body, A-Train dragging the dude on the road and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, that
Yeah.
makes, like because again, we see super speed, we think the Flash, right? But we don't think about the consequences of like what that means to go that
Your
fast.
phone, your Switch charger.
Okay.
So, and even like you said with Huey in the comic, when he's punching a hole through the guy and he doesn't realize like how strong he is and stuff, it's like,
Yeah.
well, of course that makes sense because he's going to punch a hole because he's not going to pull his punches. He's just going to be like bam, and it's like no, you have to pull your punches if you have super strength, which makes it even more scary when you think about Superman and how much he's been holding back when he fights and such. So it's like, oh,
That
this
is
more
true.
scary.
Yeah, there's comics that touched on that before. Like I'm thinking about Supreme Powers, Michael J. Straczynski, and that epic run he had on that, where every blow was like ruining the forest around them. But you never think about the consequences of Superman fighting. But yeah, they sort of explored that in Man of Steel. But yeah, this would hurt a lot of people just doing this with all that power, all that force, and to see that on display, especially at the time, was a great like reminder of how dangerous these people really are.
Yeah,
how serious it really is to be able to use that much power at any given moment. Like it's really terrible. You know what I mean? Really thinking about that.
Oh yeah. No, it's and to put it frankly with like the artwork, it's just it's got this way of kind of like gripping you in a way, and like you can't even believe what you're seeing in a way because you don't see this normally in comics. Did you guys have like a holy crap moment in the comic where you just looked at it and you were like, this is not what I was expecting?
I think the overarching layout of like just the way they set up the world was the thing that really took me aback in a good way, because it was just like, oh, this is different. Seeing corporate entities being involved in the superheroes, and the fact that there was like, we think about in the real world government officials having stuff swept under the rug because they're government officials, they're too big to fail, and the fact that applied to the superheroes, like they're sweeping a lot of messed up stuff under the rug, and it's like that makes sense. And I'm actually happy that they're doing that and showing like, yo, like these heroes in quotes here, they do just as much messed up stuff as the politicians that we tend to rail against, and the corporations are sweeping their stuff under the rug. And the fact that that's the pretty much the basis of why the boys as a team exist, I actually thought that was actually pretty good. So just that concept alone was the thing that kind of grabbed me in a good way.
Hey.
Hi, my laptop died.
Well,
we got you back.
Yeah. So
Well, Chris,
I'm on the app on my phone now.
Yeah.
Well, Chris, I think you're making a good point. And one thing that always struck me in the comic book in particular when I was reading it, and this sort of shows up more later, is when the executives show up and how cold they are and how indifferent they are. And I think they do capture that on the show. Like when Giancarlo Esposito shows up on the show and starts slapping Homelander around, reminding him who he is, what his place is in the world. Like, it's such a great contrast to see all this like crazy stuff going on, and then you have this cold person who's just coldly telling you, no, this is the way the world needs to be. This is how we maintain our power. This is how we exert power over these people. This is what needs to be done. It really, I don't want to call it refreshing, but it really makes you understand like who the real evil people are in certain instances, and how they get done what they need to get done. It's almost worse than what Homelander does to maintain power.
Very, very true. Natasha, so we were just talking about, like, did you have a, like, oh crap moment while you were reading this where you were like, oh, this is not going to be how I thought it was going to be?
Well, probably when Annie first makes it on the ship to be part of the Seven. Yeah, probably that whole scene, that whole, you need to do this if you want to be on the team. And, she's like Midwest country bumpkin, and, everything that happens afterwards. And it's just like, whoa, okay, so that's what whoa. Like, here you have your Superman kind of character dropping trow, and,
Yeah, it's truly heartbreaking in so many ways.
Yeah.
And yes, especially when you idolize Wonder Woman and all these other characters, and it's like, oh my God, this happened. Well, I mean, in this comic, but
never meet your heroes. Never meet your heroes.
Yeah.
There you go. There you go.
Definitely that example.
That was peak, and I think that's what made them doing in the show so great. It's like you didn't have to show us her doing that with the deep and stuff, but just implying it was enough to be like, oh.
Yeah. And then at first I felt like I was still kind of shocked. Like, did that seriously? Like, what?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It definitely sends you off on a different path you didn't know you were going to be on.
Yeah. Nobody's safe.
No one.
No
one. I mean, to Derek's point,
even your heroes.
Because even Derek's point with the corporations and stuff, I think that would, because I mean, we know in real life corporations can be very cold and calculating. Like, I think we already been known that, but just to see the comic and the show really go like that times 100, it's like, ooh, they just see you as a product, dog. They don't really see you as a hero. You're just that's it.
Yeah, like,
and even have
you're not meeting your quota. You're now off. We're gonna bring somebody else in.
Yeah. Well, my other favorite part was when they're talking about points on the merchandise.
Yeah.
Getting an argument. It's so real.
Yeah.
I mean? But yeah.
What you're making off your figures? Making this much? Yeah. Sales ain't really too hot right now, so we're not.
If social media was a thing in 2006, they totally would have been arguing over that too. No, I've got 3 million people on TikTok. Yeah, well, I've got 5. That's why I get more points than you do. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's just what it is, the scary realism of everything. Like, you can totally just see this happening right now. So scary. But going into like scary thoughts that you have after reading this, what were your guys' final thoughts, and kind of like if you were to, talk to someone who's never read this and kind of tell someone what you thought about this and how you would recommend it. Let's see, who should I pick on first? I'll go with Derek.
Well, for me, I think, I don't know if I said this already, this felt like a warm hug. Like I said, I was with it from the beginning. So if you're in the mood for a slap in the face, if you're in the mood for, to be jostled and shaken out of your comfort zone, this is definitely a comic for you. It's, it's consistent. It's epic in its own way, and I'd encourage any true comic book fan to give it a whirl, at least the first volume. Cause Ennis, he brings the heat, man. He did it with Punisher, he's did it with Nick Fury. I never read Hellblazer, but every time you see his name, you know what you're going to get, and it's going to be a lot of fun and a little crazy, or a lot of crazy, and you better get ready.
That was a good one. Encouraging.
Yeah. Cool.
All right.
Follow you now.
Oh, cool. Thanks.
What about you, Chris?
So when the show had dropped, I had already have read The Boys already, even before they made the announcement that they're doing the adaptation of it. So when they announced the adaptation and everything, it was a couple people that asked me, did I read the book? And I was like, yeah, I read the comic and stuff. And first reaction is, hey, it's a lot. And I did say it was a lot, but I also said you have to look at the time period it came out. So if you're looking at it in the lens of what's happening right now in the world, yeah, you're gonna kind of like be like, what the hell is this? This edgelord stuff. But like, if you just look at the book for what it is, and to Derek's point, it is very consistent. Like it knows what it is. It never deviates from it. You'll definitely enjoy the book. Like it's actually pretty good and stuff. And it's a good way to kind of read that book, and then you can still enjoy the show and enjoy the changes that they made in the show, because at the end of the day, the spirit of what from the book is still there. Like and I'm glad the show isn't one for one. I think that's the other thing. So you can still enjoy both of these things in their own way, and one doesn't supersede the other.
I like that. What about you, Natasha?
Well, the guys already covered a bunch of things that I would probably share, but if I was like talking to somebody about it, which I, was just talking to somebody about it today, definitely was not a comic book for her though, because she's like, it's way too gritty, but it would definitely give that warning of, this is not your mom's superhero book. This is definitely dark and real and gross and all the things that come with it being a more real aspect of your superhero story. But if you're into things like, the Punisher and that kind of dark, I keep saying real, but I can't really think of a better description for it, because that's what it is. It's, if you had superheroes here today, or I should say, I keep saying superhumans, because that doesn't mean, like we talked about earlier, it doesn't mean everybody, just because they have a power, they're going to be good with it. If you're interested in anything that takes you off that normal path, this is definitely the comic book for you. And then even further, the TV show. And I love that you pointed that out, that they are two different, like they're obviously same stories, the same ideas, but definitely two beasts in their own right. And that's the beautiful thing about how they did the show compared to the comic, is you can enjoy one here and enjoy one here, and then also enjoy them together. So
I think if the show came out in like the 90s, it would fit on a one for one. Because I always felt like the 90s was like the wild, wild west in terms of adapting comics and such, so you can just do whatever and stuff. And I think now, because of Marvel Studios and the DC WB films and all those things, we've gotten to a point to where it's like, hey, we don't have to like go one for one. We can still do our own thing, but we can still keep to what we know from the comics. And that's that. And like I said, going back to it, that's the beauty of the show. It's that if you read the comics, even with me reading the comic, I never felt like the show was a betrayal. It's like, no, it's what we knew from the comic right there, front and center. Like, because even with the changes, like with Black Noir, there's a change with him.
Yeah,
it still works.
Yeah.
I would say it's probably even more tragic than what the comic is, honestly.
Yeah.
That's just me. But like, those changes didn't really deviate from what we know. Because to your point,
they didn't take away.
Yeah, like to your point with A-Train, like it's like the show 1 minute we're supposed to be sympathetic with them, which you do, but then the other minute he ends up doing something that's like, all right, man, like,
dragging gunpowder space in the blacktop.
Yeah, it's like okay, and that keeps the spirit of the book, that it's superheroes that are flawed in the worst way, and the show keeps to that, and I actually like that works.
Yeah, that their emotions get the better of them, and they happen to have these superpowers, and I mean, whew.
Same with Homelander being the like poster child of his emotions, and they did it in such a good way. They could have
poster child of narcissistic, entitled guy. Yeah.
Now, if you guys like this, what would you recommend other people read? Like, What for me, I feel like it would be Preacher, obviously, Garth Ennis. Like, it's very kind of along that same lines of like, what the hell, like, just anything could happen, and things that you would not expect that are probably like R or X rated. But do you guys have any like suggestions of what people might read if they already love the boys?
Man, I think Derek made a good point on Supreme Power because I totally forgot about that team book. Like I really forgot about that because I've seen Marvel use like certain people from that team in books and stuff, but I totally forgot about that. That's actually a really good book.
Yeah, that book's amazing. But I was gonna say Irredeemable. Mark Waid had an amazing run with that book, and it's a bit more like the inverse of Invincible. But that's a crazy book. That'll throw you for a loop in terms of heroes turning on you and actually being evil and the depth that thing goes to. It's definitely not the same flavor. I would say that The Boys is more gonzo in terms of its aesthetic overall, but Irredeemable will satiate your lust for violence and evil, if you want to put it that way.
Any others? Natasha, do you have
I
any?
mean, you said Invincible. That was gonna be my pick for people to dive into, because that's like another twisted view of your superhero life. And I that one, I know we did that one for the panel too, and I was just like, what is happening?
I mean, I have a question. I don't know if I can ask a question, but
Yeah, go for it.
For you guys, like when it comes to like The Boys, just as a comic, what's an age bracket do you think would be a good start? Like what age bracket?
18.
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely 18.
35.
I mean,
Yeah.
35.
45. I have to wait.
I was at a comic book store like right when they announced The Boys, and every comic book store they always put those comics front and center for people to go and see. And I remember seeing some kids look at it like, "Is that the show that's on?" And I was like, "I don't think you should be reading that," but I don't want to be the person to make the choice on that. Like, I don't know, man. Like,
No,
it needs to be the ones that are like in the sleeve behind like the little protective cover.
Yeah, there you go. No, I agree with Natasha. I've got kids too. I would recommend being at least 18 and above. But that was like the bracket I was in. I was right out of college when this came out, and it was perfect. It's perfect timing.
Yeah,
like, the whole bit. So yeah.
There you go. College reading. This is your college reading.
Yeah.
Hey, look, because in this day and age of like
a
comic
book report
books,
later.
because this day and age of comic books, like because it's hard. Just not like I said, nowadays kids have access to so much stuff, so it's kind of hard to get a read on like what's the age bracket for this. Because if they already seen this stuff on Amazon, Netflix, and all these other stuff, like how far be it for me to sit there and say you're not of age to see this, read this, and it's like, well, can they read this? I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah,
well, as a parent, I'm telling you, no.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
There it is.
Okay, Mom, whatever you say.
And on that note, this is your reminder to pick up The Boys at your friendly local comic shop if you're 18 and older. To find a comic shop near you, simply head on over to comicshoplocator.com. I want to thank y'all for coming on and talking about this. We could fill so much more time just talking and probably a lot of stuff that we can't say on the air.
That's fair.
But I want to thank y'all for coming in and joining me. Let me get you guys to say, where people can find you, if you have any new projects coming up. Natasha, where can people find you and what you got coming up?
CanonDollX.com. And I'm at CanonDollX at every platform. If you can't remember what address or what platform to find me on, you can Google CanonDollX, and I'm the only one. So I've got roller derby games coming up. I've got StellarCon. I've got oh my gosh, I cannot remember the name of it right now. I have a cool Fright Fest convention coming up in September. I don't know. You go to my website, it has it all listed there. I'm doing Ocean City Comic Con in December. I love them. They're such a great crowd. And then StellarCon, probably Fairfax Comic Con, and then hopefully Fayetteville Comic Con or New York Comic Con. I'm not sure. But just go CanonDollX.com, like I said. It also links to DST Unboxed and all of my preview stuff that I do for Toy Just News and What's at Your Comic Shops. and all of that fun stuff. And then before I go, I just want to say, because so Riley can throw this up, I got to meet A-Train in real life
cool.
and interview him.
Oh,
And
very cool.
he
Wait,
is
he's
one
great.
of the most charismatic people I have ever met in my entire life. And he was really, really cool. So fun to interview. It was also during the strike, so we couldn't
Oh wow.
ask, talk about specific things. I want to close out. I know we keep talking about it. I want to close out. I want to ask you guys the question I was going to ask him is, if he didn't already have superpowers and someone gave him Compound V, what powers would he want? And then what powers would he actually get? Because, some of them are kind of weird.
I mean,
It's a good one, right? It's a good question. I didn't get to ask it.
After talking about the boys, it's sort of terrifying.
Right? Yeah. Yeah.
What was it? It was always like, if you say it's something like to benefit the world, like their reasoning, then you're going to be a hero. And if you're like thinking about how you can use it to make money, like then you aren't. But I'm always like, invisibility. I could find a way to be rich with that.
This
Right?
is how I know I'll be a villain, because I have always been fascinated with Taskmaster and photographic reflex.
Nice.
And being a mercenary and being able to
Yeah.
be like, hey, I can teach people how to fight. I can use this to my advantage and make some money. So I already know where I'm sitting at off the rip. Because it's like a valued asset, but I can also just like, hey, whoever's high bidding, I can throw some money at me. We're good, so.
I would want to fly just so I could nope out of there. Whatever's going on. Nope. See you later. I'm out of here.
Nope, out of there.
Just get going. See ya.
That's amazing.
See, that's the good superhero one right there.
Yeah. Nope, out of
Chris and
there.
I are going to be like Robin Banks.
Nope. I don't want that smoke.
Yeah.
All right.
Sorry, go ahead, everybody else.
Chris, where can people find you and what you got coming up?
Yes, I am 1/3 of the Three Black Geeks podcast, the number 3 Black Geeks. You can find us on, go to our website, 3blackgeeks.com. That's where we have everything. We podcast about a variety of stuff. We have multiple shows. Today we're actually going to be recording about The Fifth Element. That's one of our movies that we're going to be doing. And we got a couple of conventions upcoming that we're going to be at, BlurCon, Otakon, Power Morphicon actually in August. That's the Power Rangers convention in Pasadena. We're going to be there. And yeah, just look us up on Twitter, IG, everywhere else, and you can find us there.
Yes, Power Morphicon. That was like my first like fandom convention I went to, and I didn't know how hard like Power Ranger fans go. They go hard.
My friend Scott puts that one on. That's a good show.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, no, it was fun.
Yeah.
All right, what about you, Derek? Where can people find you and what you got going on?
Well, you can find me on Amazon. If you love the boys, you'll love my books. The Vicious Game or Knuckle Crack Bone are available on Amazon for purchase. Just look up Derek Scarzella, Knuckle Crack Bone. You can find me on the internet at Action A Go Go, TikTok, Instagram, X, whatever they call it. You can also follow me on Instagram at Derek Scar. I'm a little bit more active on that one these days. You can also check out our YouTube channel. Please like and subscribe. We've got talks about all sorts of fun stuff. I interviewed a director recently of the movie Dusk for a Hitman, a cool little Canadian noir film, crime noir film. That was a lot of fun. And yeah, just feel free to reach out, hit me up, and enjoy.
Nice. Thank y'all so much for joining me. This was so much fun. Thank you guys so much. And
you.
For everyone watching, if you have a graphic novel that you'd like us to talk about, leave a comment below and your choice could be picked for a future episode. This is also your reminder to follow us at Previews World and Free Comic Book Day on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And finally, just a little going away present to tell you that heroes are a dime a dozen, but comic fans are priceless. See you next time.